What's up, snappers? Welcome back to the channel. DREWSKY here. Today we're gonna be looking at the brand new card Khonshu to see if he's worth your precious resources. We're gonna be looking at his key Synergies Counters and some decks that I brewed for him. But wait, before we do that, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. I do weekly reviews of the brand new card in Marvel Snap, so if you don't want to miss out, hit that notification bell right now. Now let's get back into it. Now the question is, who is Khonshu? Let's take a look. So Khonshu in Marvel Snap is a 6-cost, 5-power card with the ability of, when discarded, return it to his next phase. On reveal, resurrect a card you discarded to another location with its power set to 5. So this card has multiple phases of itself. I will explain the phases of it right now. So the first phase is what I explained his ability is, and then after, if it gets discarded, Khonshu's power is set to 8. And then the next phase is called waxing. When discarded, return it to its final phase. On reveal, resurrect a card you discarded to another location with its power set to 8. If it's discarded, Khonshu's power is set to 12. And then the final phase is called full. The on reveal ability is resurrect a card you discarded to another location with its power set to 12. So it has 3 phases. Technically, the first phase is its default phase. So ideally you want to discard him twice to get him at 12 power, and then whatever card you resurrect with him sets its power to 12, which is crazy. I believe that this card can evolve the discard archetype. You don't have to play APOC as always, and it will change the landscape of discard. So what I think is really cool about the card is like it's a hybrid of APOC and Ghost Rider. It can resurrect a card if you can play it out early, or you can play it on the final turn. So if you're a discard enjoyer, Khonshu is definitely going to be a must-have. Now let's break down the pros and cons of Khonshu. So a great pro about him is that it's great scaling and power. Seeing he can grow to 8 and then 12 is awesome. Another pro about him is that it's an alternative to APOC. If you're kind of bored of playing the APOC style of discard, Khonshu is a great alternative, right? It grows in power and it can resurrect a card. So you have the choice when to resurrect a card and play Khonshu on the board. So it really depends if you can ramp him out early, or if there's a location that gives you the ability to play him out early, then you can resurrect a card at a certain moment of time. If you want to resurrect them at 5 power or 8 or 12, it really depends on the situation. But again, it gives you the agency. So now let's talk about the cons. It sets the power. It doesn't add power to the card that gets resurrected. So you have to remember that whatever card is higher than 5, 8, or 12, then they can get reduced, right? So adding is usually better. Setting a power, it really depends on what you resurrect. It really depends on what you discarded, really. You have to make sure that whatever you discard, you're okay with that power being set. So it's reliant on drawing discard cards. Again, discard is very combo centric. So if you're not able to discard cards like Lady Sif, Blade in time for Khonshu, then it could be kind of rough for you. So another big con about him is that it resurrects the card in a random location. You don't know where it's going to be resurrecting that card. So you have to plan out your turns, right? Now let's take a look at the synergies and counters for Khonshu. So the first synergy that I want to talk about, of course, Moon Knight. It pairs up perfectly with Khonshu. Again, it matches the lore. So Moon Knight discards an even cost card from each player's hand. Really awesome to pair up with Khonshu because Khonshu is a 6-cost card. And then of course it disrupts your opponent's hand. Lady Sif is another great synergy with Khonshu. Khonshu is a 6-cost card, so Lady Sif, more than likely, it really depends on how you build the deck, but it should be able to target Khonshu pretty efficiently. Blade is another great synergy with Khonshu. Hopefully after you've discarded him once, or if he approaches in your hand on the right side, then Blade can discard Khonshu pretty easily. So now let's talk about the counters. Spider-Ham is a great counter against Khonshu, disabling his ability just like APOC. If you disable their ability, then they can't do what they need to do, right? They can't resurrect, you can't on reveal. So Leech is another great counter against Khonshu. Of course, Khonshu is a 6-cost card. Disabling the ability is detrimental. Cosmo is a great counter against Khonshu. Khonshu has a on reveal ability, and the cards surrounding him will have on reveals. So be careful of the dog. Now let's take a look at the decks that I brewed. I think they're pretty fun and competitive. Let's take a look. So the first deck that we have is called KhonStats. This is my version of the good stats list mixed with Darkhawk with Khonshu. So the ideal goal of this deck is to disrupt your opponent as much as possible, discard Khonshu as much as possible, and reap all the benefits of discarding and disrupting your opponent. So Korg and Blade have tremendous value in this list. Korg adding rocks to your opponent's deck is very good for Darkhawk. Blade is a great card for Khonshu, discarding Khonshu, or you can discard a card and resurrect them with Khonshu. Fenris Wolf is a value pick here for Moon Knight or Black Bull if you discard one of their cards and then bring it back with Fenris Wolf. Cassandra Nova is just a value pick in this list, especially with all the Airshim, Thanos, or even Agamotto decks that are out there. Juggernaut is one of the best underrated tech cards in the game, moving all those enemy cards in their lane. Moon Knight is an amazing pairing with Khonshu. More than likely, you'll be able to discard Khonshu or Rock Slide. You definitely want to avoid discarding Fenris Wolf. Lady Sif is a must-have with Khonshu. Lady Sif more than likely will target Khonshu or one of the cards in your deck, and then potentially you can resurrect it with Khonshu. Rock Slide, of course, is a must-have with Darkhawk, adding more rocks to your opponent's deck, and then potentially for them to draw it. Darkhawk right now has tremendous value, especially with all the cards in the meta, and adding more rocks to their deck is really good. Black Bull has tremendous value in this list, especially being paired up with Stature. More than likely, Stature will be a 1/7 with all the discarding that's happening with this list, so tremendous value in this list. Khonshu is really the biggest finisher in this list, especially if you accidentally discard one of the other cards and then resurrect it with Khonshu. This list is definitely built to discard Khonshu as much as possible, and you definitely want to take advantage of that. All right, now let's take a look at my second list. So this list is called DisKhonshu. So this is my take on the traditional discard archetype featuring Khonshu. So the ideal goal of this list is to discard as much as possible, generate a lot of power as much as possible, and then have a very big last turn. Scorn and Blade have tremendous value in this list. More than likely, you want to discard Scorn as much as possible and generate that power. Blade is just a great targeted discard card. If you have Khonshu on the right, Blade is a must-have. Morbius and the Collector definitely should be played on board, and you definitely want to avoid discarding them. Calling Wing is here to discard Scorn or Swarm. Moon Knight, of course, is an amazing pairing with Khonshu. Definitely a must-have to discard him or potentially Swarm. Lady Sif is a great pairing with Khonshu. More than likely, you'll be able to discard Khonshu in your hand. Dracula is here to absorb the power of Khonshu or any of the other cards that are left in your hand. You definitely want to avoid having swarms in your hand with Dracula, so definitely play out those swarms. Proximia Midnight is great here just to discard. You definitely don't want her in your hand, or potentially you could have her in your hand and have Dracula absorb that power. MODOK is really here as a failsafe if you haven't been able to discard Khonshu or the Swarm or Scorn. It really depends on your hand, but you definitely can use him to discard as much as possible. Khonshu is really here just for his power, his 12 power, if you could discard him twice or resurrect a card that you actually discarded. All right, now let's take a look at my third and final list. So this list is called Khonshu. This is another version of the traditional discard archetype, but it's a little bit different. So the ideal goal of this list is to discard as much as possible, generate power, and have options of either discarding Khonshu or APOC. So Scorn is a great target just to start discarding and generate power. Blade is just a great value pick here, discarding Scorn, Swarm, or Khonshu or APOC. Morbius, you definitely want to play him on the board, just like Victoria Hand, start generating those power. Victoria Hand is really here just for Swarm. If you can discard Swarm as much as possible, you have 5 powered Swarms. Moon Knight is really here just for Khonshu. You definitely want to avoid discarding cards like Morbius or Dracula. But if you can resurrect them with Khonshu, then it could potentially work. Corvus Glaive is in the Spotlight week with Khonshu, so I wanted to take advantage of him and his ability of discarding 2 cards. So potentially you could work it within this list. Lady Sif is here for Khonshu and APOC. It really depends on what's in your hand, but she can target those and it's awesome. Dracula is really here to absorb the power of APOC or Khonshu. You more than likely you want to absorb the power of APOC and then just play out Khonshu on turn 6. MODOK again is here to discard as much as possible, hitting the Swarms, Scorn, Khonshu, or APOC. Khonshu is great in this list if you need to resurrect a card, maybe bring back a card that you discarded by accident, and then have more discard options at the last turn. And then APOC is here just for Dracula. Generating all that power is insane, or you can just play him on turn 6. Now let's take a look at the spotlights that are featured with Khonshu. So Khonshu is with Scorn and Corvus Glaive. Khonshu is a Series 5 card, Scorn is Series 5, and Corvus Glaive is Series 4. So of course, Khonshu is paired up with discard options like Scorn and Corvus Glaive. Scorn is definitely a must-have if you love discard. Definitely go get her. She is a power generating card and she's awesome in discard. Corvus Glaive, I would say it's not really a must-have, but again, if you're a discard enjoyer, definitely go get him. Corvus Glaive can work with cards like Hela, but more than likely he is cuttable. So for the Spotlight variants, Khonshu, Alex Horley is amazing. I love the art style. He definitely looks straight out from the comics. Scorn's variant is awesome, but she does have a lot of good shop variants. But this is definitely one of her best ones. For Corvus Glaive, I'm not really huge on the art style. I'm not huge on the huge blade in the way. So remember, guys, to have 4 keys before opening in a week. You definitely don't want to regret missing out on a card or a variant that you really want. So make sure you have 4 keys available. Now let's take a look at the community predictions of Khonshu. So the community believes that Khonshu for S tier 2 stars, A tier 4 stars, C tier 2 stars, and F tier only a half star. So there's a lot of hype for Khonshu. If you're a discard enjoyer, you're definitely probably going to be picking up this card. But there are some reservations of if the card can't work with the combos that, you know, is required of the card. So here's a community comment from LF Animes 333. They said, voted for C, but he's most likely a B tier card. Very solid, but only fits in one archetype, his own. And the archetype is likely to be good at best, if not decent. So I 100% agree with you. He's going to be very niche in discard specifically. And we will see if he potentially grows the discard archetype, evolving it even further. Bullseye was a great, you know, evolution of the deck. So hopefully he brings more flavor to discard. So thank you again for your comments. If you want to be featured in the next video, make sure to follow my community post about the brand new card. Leave a review. Let us know what you think about the brand new card. Now let's take a look at my star ratings for Khonshu. So for competitive, I gave him a 3.5 stars. I'm a little bit reserved on the combo potential of this card. Really depends on how much you can draw him or draw out the discard options consistently. And I'm a little bit worried about the consistency of the card. For fun, I gave him a 5 stars. I believe a lot of people love power growth in Marvel Snap, and being able to resurrect a card, it should be really fun. So for flexibility, I gave him a 1.5 stars. I believe his home, of course, will be in discard. I did throw him into a good stats list, but is definitely reaching there. But more than likely, he will be living in discard. For future changes, I gave him a 2 stars. Maybe he'll get buffed in the future. I don't really see him getting nerfed because there are a lot of steps that you have to do to get his ability to go off or, you know, get it going. Now let's take a look at my final review of Khonshu. Is he worth a snap or skip? Let's take a look. So for pre-Series 3 owners, surprisingly, it's only 2 stars. There are a lot of pieces that are needed to get Khonshu rolling, so you're going to be missing a lot of cards for Khonshu. For Series 3 owners, I would say Khonshu is definitely a safe get. You definitely have a lot of pieces that can work with Khonshu, so you should be fine there. For Series 4 and 5 owners, I gave him a 4 stars. You're going to be having a lot of pieces that work well with him. There are some Series 5 cards that will push him over the edge to be a lot better, so you should be safe on getting him. So the archetypes that he works well with are discard and good stats. With that being said, I would say Khonshu is definitely a snap, but with a huge asterisk. Again, if you're not a discard enjoyer, definitely skip this card. If you don't like combo centric cards like him, then definitely skip him. But I see the potential in him. I do enjoy his ability, being able to discard him, make him grow in power. And you can resurrect a card if you play him down on the board. I think it's really cool. And setting that power to whatever power that he's currently at, I think is amazing. So again, it really depends if you like unique abilities like this. If you're not a discard enjoyer, skip this card completely. So let me know your thoughts on the cards. Did I miss any decks? Did I miss any synergies that work well with him? Am I completely wrong? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel. I would love for you to be a part of this amazing community here on YouTube. And I'll see you guys on the next Snap or Skip. Happy snapping.